Hello guys, this is Movie Lover and welcome to this Movie Lover world. Today I'm going to explain a movie called Natasha. This movie was released in so without wasting any time, let's jump into the video. The film begins with a year-old boy named Mark who is out with friends late at night. Mark is now attempting to get closer to a girl. If that girl leaves, Mark will also go to his houses. Mark watches adult videos at home before going to bed when it's early in the morning. Then his mother arrives to pick him up. She informs Mark that your uncle and Jenna are on their way. Mark's uncle and Jenna then arrive at his home. Jenna, who was from Russia when Jenna was serving everyone food. Then Mark locks his gaze on Jenna. Following that, Mark's sister begins telling Mark about how everyone was staring at her because of Gina's dress. Only then would her mother appear and she tells them that it could be Russian fashion and that we shouldn't judge people based on their clothes. Jenna is already married with a daughter named Natasha. We learn Jenna travels to Russia to retrieve her. When she returns, everyone goes to the airport to meet her, which is where Mark first meets Natasha, who is years old. After a few days, Mark's uncle and Jenna marry and everyone in the party eats. But Natasha was becoming bored, so Mark's mother informs him that Natasha is becoming bored here, so show her around. Accepted. Mark shows Natasha around his house and his room. Natasha then inquires of Mark, what do you do here? So Mark claims that I only watch television in my room. Natasha then asks, did you make out with any of the girls here? Mark is taken aback when he hears this. How can you do such things? He asks, you're only years old, you are not ashamed of your actions. Natasha then says, I've done it with men so far, and if you want I can do it with you as well. Mark informs me that my uncle has married your mother and as a result we are cousins. Natasha informs Mark that she despises her mother. She is a bad woman who has an affair with several men. It's all over and she's seen it all, but Mark falls silent. Following this, Mark's mother informs him that Natasha has arrived for the first time in this country and that he must look after her. You must devote time to her because he has no friends at all. This Mark was listening to his mother's words, but he already knew what kind of girl Natasha was. The next day, Mark goes to Natasha's house where Jenna informs him that Natasha prefers to be alone and that she is unique. Mark should not be upset if she becomes angry with him. Natasha's mother then calls her out. However, they were engaged in a fight. Natasha became enraged as a result of this and left. When she walks away, Mark follows her and asks Natasha, what is the matter? Natasha then expresses her desire not to see her mother's face, and by bringing her here she further ruined Natasha's life. Following this, Mark takes Natasha to the home of his friend Rufus where she meets Rufus, but Natasha is always asking about Rufus. After that, Mark informs him that his parents have divorced and that Rufus is living alone. After that, they have lunch together and, after spending so much time with Natasha, Mark decides to leave her at home and Natasha tells him as she walks away, I'll come to your house tomorrow. He was studying Mark the next day. Natasha arrives to meet him and they both talk for a while before heading out on a bicycle. Now we learn that Mark sells ball to his friends, which Natasha witnesses. She also asks Mark if I can smoke as well. The following day, when Natasha arrives at Mark's house, Mark gives her bald. Natasha then obtains Mark's permission and begins using her laptop. When she turns on the laptop, she immediately starts watching adult videos that Mark had left there. Natasha enjoys seeing this and takes the laptop to Mark, telling him, I want to show you something. She begins showing Mark naked photos. In addition, she claims to make dirty videos. Now Natasha is seducing Mark and her clothes are falling off. Even Mark is powerless to stop her. Natasha then tells Mark about herself, revealing that she began doing all of this at the age of her mother was also made aware of the situation and she used to do it all for money. Her mother also wanted to take her money. That was the reason their relationship was failing. After that, they began meeting every day. Meanwhile, Mark falls in love with Natasha and he drives her to the party and around the city. Mark's uncle and Jenna now go out. After a few days, Natasha was therefore staying at Mark's house. Both were chatting late at night before saying good night and retiring to bed. Natasha eventually appears in Mark's room. She claims she is unable to sleep, so they both go outside and Natasha tells Mark, I really like it. She says I wish it was finished. Life can exist. Then Mark tells him that this is his home and that he can come here whenever he wants. Natasha then informs Mark that my mother is cheating on your uncle and is still having an affair with someone. She claims that I told your uncle about it, but he didn't believe me and began to suspect me of lying. After a few days, Jenna and Mark's uncle returns and asks Natasha to accompany him, but Natasha flatly refuses him, stating that she will not accompany him and will remain with him. Then his mother tells him, I understand why you want to stay with him. At the same time she says, I know what you do with Mark. Natasha becomes enraged and begins fighting with Jenna. Then Mark's death comes between them and Natasha is forced to accompany Jenna even though she does not want to. The next day Mark goes to Natasha's house where she apologizes to Jenna, who says it's not your fault because she is a very spoiled girl. She has had relationships with a number of older men, claiming that you are a child. Jenna asks Mark to leave and refuses to let her meet Natasha. That night Natasha arrives at Mark's house with all of her belongings and informs him that she is leaving for Florida. She invites him to stay a little longer. She claims that my mother and your uncle divorced as a result of my actions, because I had an affair with your uncle. As a result their relationship suffers. I didn't want my mother to ruin your uncle's life. Natasha stayed at Mark's house at night until morning. Then Mark gives him the money he saved so he can get some assistance, and Natasha leaves with all of her belongings. Mark's family was upset, wondering why their uncle had broken up this marriage, because no one is aware of the truth. Rufus, Mark's friend, called him several times, but he did not answer. When Mark went to Rufus' house, it was still a few days later. Then he notices Natasha was present. Rufus informs him that he called him to tell him the same thing, but you did not answer the phone. Natasha, he says, will be safe only with me. Then Natasha appears and begins blaring angrily at Mark. Mark becomes enraged and departs. He had been thinking of her as his love until now. He will betray him in this manner. He didn't even consider it. This is where the film ends. I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Movie Lover will meet you again with new story. Till take care.